It's me. Hello. Hi everyone. I'm looking at my monitor now. Looking at you. Monitor. Look at me. Monitor. Alright, cool. Alright. So, this is gonna be basically me. And I guess my sort of approach to what is it? What I learned about leadership and everything. Right? Hopefully I'm looking at the camera and not like looking here because it looks weird. Actually I'll put myself in front. Yeah. Fine. Cool. I look really good for some reason. So let's see. I know. Let's do this. Alright, slideshow. Very good. I like the border. The border's pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. Alright. So, what have I learned about leadership? So, by me, um, I don't know. I chose these stock images because I thought they were pretty funny. So yeah, they're by me and everything. So, not that I made these. I got these from Unsplash, but I made this presentation. Yes. Alright. So, like, I don't know, story time. Like, okay. Why am I interested in leadership? Okay, so I'm broke. Well, actually, like, generally I'm making good-ish money, but at the same time, I feel like I could do better. Better with my time and better with, like, I don't know, how I make my money. You know? And, like, I don't know, I feel like the way I live now is, like, it is minimalist, we'll say. But, like, I don't know, I feel like I can, I have a higher capacity for fun. Or at least, like, the way I'm living right now is not, I guess, idealistic. You know, something that I have in the back of my mind is like the idea about sniffing the roses. And I don't know, I could live all my life living the current lifestyle I have now, but it's not fun. I think it's fine. It's fine to everything, but like I don't know, this is not how I'm gonna meet my friends, how I'm gonna meet the love of my life, or like do exciting projects. Like this is not how I'm gonna do it. So like I need to have, I guess, a better income. You know what I mean? I just want to move out to New York, have fun there, make new friends, meet the love of my life, and like do that, And then I want to retire young. I don't know. I think if I can retire like at 30, I think that'd be amazing. So that's how I do. Retire my parents. That's what I want to do. I want my mom loves to travel, or like that's what she says. She wants to have like all experiences and stuff like that. And then my dad, he just wants to have a farm and just enjoy his life in the Philippines. I'm like, I feel bad for them because in the sense like at the current rate that they're going right now, I don't think that it is possible. So I kind of want to give them that. I can choose not to do that, but this is a struggle I'm willing to endure for because I actually want to do this for them. So, yeah. So how am I gonna do this really? Like how am I gonna move out? How am I gonna retire young? And how am I gonna retire my parents? You know what I mean? Like that's hard. Hard enough as is, right? But I think what is it? The basic idea right now is like I don't know. In order to sort of like you can't save your way to being a millionaire, right? You can't. What is it like? How do you get to this? So basically, what you need to do is I don't know. I think it's in $1 Million Fast Lane where they show you like okay, so what you want to do is to explode your income, right? So yeah, and essentially like when I mean, you can use the two things to your advantage to like save money. Like not blowing your money. Like don't spend more than you make. Easy thing to follow. But like at the same time, like I don't know, if you actually do want to be rich, you actually have to like make it more efficient for everything you do. So like there's this thing Alex Hormozi says. It says that like people don't actually run faster. It's more so that they get more out of each step. You know what I mean? Like if you had longer legs, right? Like you'd be able to get more out of each step. So basically, this is what you're doing with your time. You're spending the same amount of time, but if you can have more money for the amount of time that you if an hour costs you $11, but you manage to make it 25, you've actually I think was that I think you blackjacked your not blackjack. Yeah, it's not blackjack. I don't know. You've drastically changed the amount of time. You can do more in less time, basically. You know what I mean? So it's amazing. You know. So explode your time, essentially. So I've tried this, I saw online for like YouTube, like, oh, how to get rich online, and like, so it's like freelancing or like try copywriting or do sales and stuff like that. That I've tried, especially with sales. Like, I think I was interested in the idea of doing it, but the issue with that was that, like, literally, I don't like the idea about, like, you just do things randomly, like, you have to schedule times and everything. That is not that appealing to me, honestly. Terrible, you know. But one of the things that, like, actually, like, really sort of, like, I don't know, I enjoyed was, like, learning about, like, the DBM bootcamp by, like, Deo right here. Like, non-sponsored, but I think what was very appealing to me was the idea that, like, you can make projects, right? Or at least, like, just like set, what is it, like, this is like productivity, but as a job, you know? Like, I love productivity, you know what I mean? Because, like, when I was growing up, I used to, like, watch, like, Thomas Frank, like, all the time, and, like, then became Matt Davila, and then Ali Abdaal, and that sort of thing. And Matt, what's it called, Nathan Drew? Yeah, but less so. But, like, generally, this is just, like, just making projects for a living, you know? And so, and just, like, I'm not into the scheduling thing of sort of stuff, but, like, just, like, organizing projects and everything. This is very much me, you know? And, like, basically which call, going back to Daya and everything, it's basically a PM, but generally, the sort of breakdown she has is, like, okay, you're just managing tasks and projects, managing people, and then doing automations and systems. And, like, that's the general idea of what a DBM is, you know what I mean? And, like, they're just all compact into one, and you're just a very useful unit, right? So really over the course of, like, what is it, 5 months, I was, like, spending 4 months on literally, like, working on 4 months working on my, what is it, DBM boot camp, and then later I did, like, 5 weeks of Google certification. Like, all of this I was just speeding up. I was like, oh yeah, I just gotta do this. And it was really cool doing over the 5 months, like, getting all this information and ideas and everything like that, and, like, at least, like getting really good at productivity, right? Immensely helpful, right? But one of the big problems was that I realized in becoming a DBM, I didn't know how to lead people, or at least I didn't really know how to, like, I guess, go about the systems of doing things. Like, it's one thing to know things, but, like, to actually, like, try things. Like, I guess, like, you could learn the notes or piano and everything, but, like, actually playing it, like, getting down, like, the sort of, like getting your hand on things and, like, actually, like, trying, like, I don't know, it's very different, you know what I mean? Like, how to execute things versus, like, how you think in your mind, right? Like, how are you gonna do that? And I don't know, just leading in general, something I do not have, I guess, experience in. So basically, I read 2 books in general, and so the first one is, what is it? The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, right? And then the second one is Radical Candor. So basically, it's just like how to criticize people, and that's what I did in over, like, the last 2 weeks or so. So basically, for the first book, right, for John Maxwell's book, Laws of Leadership, like, I don't know, I think there are a lot of points. 21. I didn't even read the last one, the 21st, but in general, how I see it as is that, like, in order to actually be, like, a good leader and stuff like that, is just be a good person, managing the relationships, and then law of leverage, which I totally forgot what that means, but I progressed. So, like, just generally be a good person, right? Like, if I want to, like, I hope I don't follow people who are who are inconsistent, they're liars, and they are rude to people. Like, from that basis, I do not have respect for them. I want people who are respectful, high in moral integrity, and who are kind. You know what I mean? Like, good people, right? Like, I would not follow a robber unless we are robbing for a good reason. Like, people with morals, like, people who, I don't know, you can trust, right? Second one is, like, develop your connections. Like, I think one of the biggest problems that people have against, like, bosses are sort of, like, I don't know, how we usually see people in, like, like Amazon, right? Like, Jeff Bezos gets, like, a lot of flack for, like, just being a boss. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's true or not, but, like, how it seems is that his employees are seemed as, like, less than. You know what I mean? Like, taking bathroom breaks and, like, things like that. Like, you gotta be productive, right? Like, you're just, like, cog in the machine. But, like, I think what really makes a good boss is when you are seen as like an actual person that is respectable. You know what I mean? Like, you're not below, you're not above. You're just sort of like, we're all equal in a sense, And like, I appreciate my floor manager, right? My supervisor, as a person who like, who respects the people around her. Like, she respects me as a person, like, doesn't like shout or is like is angry at people. She just is. So like, very good. And I like that, right? Next, so law of influence. Oh, I guess the law of leverage. I don't know. So, law of influence, right? I gotta fix the other slide and everything. But basically, law of influence, like, I think this was like the second point in the book. But directly about like, I don't know, your influence is measured by your leadership. Or your leadership is influenced. Your leadership is influenced by. Your leadership is based on your influence. That's the way how you say this. So like, it's not popularity. It doesn't mean like you're the most popular girl or guy in such way, right? But rather, it is more like what I say, you follow. You know what I mean? And like, that's basically what it is. So I don't know. A lot of people can be leaders, right? Like, for instance, you can be a teacher, right? And then like, you say like, oh, we're gonna do this test, and then they follow what you say. And I don't know. Out of like many factors, like there are ways how you can kind of get into that. And so, side tangent, right? There's this thing by Alex Hormozi, he calls it the influence framework. I think he has a lot of, I guess, experience in terms of like what does influence mean and everything like that. He read about like Cialdini and everything like that. So I'll just take his sort of like, I guess, summarization of ideas and just like pack it all in one. Or that's what he did, right? So like, I don't know, you can. So there's credibility, likeness, power, and status. So moving forward. So there's likability. So like, if there's a person who looks like you, say like, you're a Filipino guy, right? You'd probably like to listen to me. Like, at least you could probably relate, compared to like, I don't know, a what you call Indian girl in her, I don't know, who's five. I don't know. You wouldn't relate to that. You'd be like, oh, she's Asian, but I mean, like, she's just kind of like far from the idea of you as a concept. You know what I mean? Like, I can't really relate to like old senior men at work. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not something I relate to necessarily. You know what I mean? No shit on them, but like, just doesn't relate to me. But you can. It doesn't have to be you as in terms of your likeness, but rather your values and such. Because like I have a friend, what is it, who comes to my work and everything, and he's like an like what I think 73 year old British guy. We are very different, but I think like in terms of like ideas and everything like that, I think like I don't know, we are very close. I consider him a friend because he's so cool. But yeah, I'd probably like follow what he says. Credibility. So this is like your doctors. These are your teachers, police officers, people with licenses. Like I don't know, they have authority over you. You know what I mean? Or at least. Okay, I take that back. Credibility. So like obviously like doctors, right? The perfect prime example because they know what you need because they've studied a field in this. They are licensed. Like they'll follow what you say. Right? Power. So power is like something like I guess this is more of the base of like what it is. Like people who have said something and you have yield positive results. So say for instance, like for me, I started fasting because that's what I heard online, and a friend of mine also did. And I started fasting. I'm like, oh wow, fasting worked. And like, I'm like a lot more skinnier. Like, like before I used to have like cheeks a little bit, but now they're like kind of like, it's like cut, sculpted. And so like now, I think following the advice of my friend and like probably maybe the same person online, they probably have power over me. And the next one is status. You know what I mean? So this is like someone's in charge of resources. So I think what was really interesting when Alex Hormozi said this is that like you can be like a bartender. Like bartenders have power because they are in charge of the drinks. Millionaires are part of like money. They have that scarce resource, and that's what makes them valuable. And then like for a woman, right, it's her body. Like men, like just want women. You know what I mean? Like they're not. Men are not the attractors, but like more so like the people who like chase after. You know what I mean? And so like I think this is like I guess a dramatic sense of like what it means to have status, but I think like I think builds the picture most definitely. Okay, so like radical candor, right? Um, so I read this book, right? Was because how far we are. I don't know how far we are. It doesn't even show. The frig. 15 minutes. Jesus. So radical candor. So radical candor just means like I started reading this because like I think the first book it was good in terms of a very like big picture view, but radical candor I think like because this is so big with management like like talking to people, communications and everything like that. And I've had problems with my own manager where like different manager I was thinking about where like communication was like so difficult with her because like she's always like I don't know, like how else do I not feel like like hurt by what she says? You know what I mean? Like there's like I don't know, like I guess there'd be jokes, but like it felt it hurt. You know what I mean? Like you can't get to that. You know. Ugh. I'm gonna skip this. So basically, how do you criticize people? You know, so glad you asked. Um, basically, there are two dimensions to like how do you criticize people, right? So the first one is like you care personally. So you can either choose to be like a manager who just I don't know sucks. You know, like you just don't care about the work you do. You're just kind of there for the money and such. And then you can have a second one where you're kind of like really invested in the people you work with. You know, you build connections. Maybe you're friends with them. You know, and like that's good, right? But then at the same time, you have to learn how to challenge directly. So like there are some people who kind of just like give all compliments and like, oh, you're doing good job, good job, good job. You know, but like it's not never specific. Or like they don't give criticism, but like really you should be giving both criticism as well as praise. And so like I don't know, you can see on like I don't know the bottom right where it's like okay, you have the jerks and mean bosses. Like these are the people who just don't care about you and challenge you directly, like saying like, oh, that's garbage, you know. Um, and that's what it is, you know. You just have like obnoxious people, right, who are just aggressive, and then you got like top left who say nothing. So like that's me personally. Like I wouldn't want to say anything because like I might hurt someone's feelings, you know. But I'd care, right? And then you have the back talkers, which like don't care at all and don't say anything directly. You know, like they just keep quiet for the sake of just like I guess maintaining peace. Maybe I don't know. But like what you really want to do is be radically candid, where you care personally and challenge directly. This is what it is. Um, and here was I was saying is just like just be specific in the firm. You know, in the ways that like you sort of like go about things. You know, just like say like okay, I know what you're doing, right? I respect you as a person, but you cannot keep doing this. And so like it just shows like a level of like level headedness. You know, you're not very like overly angry, you're not very sad. It's kind of like I'm stable. Please be doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? And finish. All right. Well, that's that. And thank you for listening. Dude.